This is weird. I didn't plan this out before I did this. Welcome to another episode of Pokemon Go, something that I'm going to call Pokemon Go Masterclass. Alright, so today on an episode of what did I call this? Pokemon Masterclass. I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. Did I steal that by accident? I'm gonna have to Google it. Anyways, today on Pokemon Masterclass, we're gonna be eating Trolley Sour Bright Trees. It's an epic food review for Sour Bright Trees. Orange one. It tastes great. So today, on Pokemon Masterclass, we're actually going to be talking about the Boulder Cup. Since PvP was introduced, there's been a large community centered around competitive play, and over at sylph.gg you can sign up to actually participate in your local community's Boulder Cup. Essentially, the Boulder Cup is a tournament based upon a theme dealing where you can only have a Great League Pokemon, meaning everything is less than or equal to 1500 CP. You can only have Fighting, Rock, Ground, and Steel type Pokemon. So, what that means is that Pokemon like Medicham contain Fighting, but it also contains Psychic. So therefore, as long as it has one of these four typings, it is allowed to be in the Boulder League. What's going to be the best team for Boulder League? Now, I've watched a video or two here or there, I've read some articles here and there, and there seems to be a large consensus that there's going to be this rock, paper, scissors type meta, which is kind of what I have outlined here. Rock, paper, scissors. The way the meta is going to unfold largely dictates these four types, in my opinion. So, I made this small effectiveness chart to kind of illustrate how these effectivenesses work. So Fighting is super effective against both Steel and against Rock. Ground is super effective against both Rock and Steel. And Steel is actually super effective against Rock. As you can see, Rock is going to be angled every single different way that it possibly can, and it's going to be the worst type to have on your Pokemon, in my opinion. The other reason for this is because Rock also is not very effective to Ground, Steel, or Fighting. So it actually will take super effective damage from all three other types. Plus, it won't be able to actually do normal, even neutral damage to each of the other types as well. Based upon a Gamepress article, which I will have linked down in the description below, what they are talking about is that you're going to have a guaranteed pick, which I do agree that this Pokemon is going to be the best pick and should be probably prioritized. It's not necessary. I want to stress that it's not necessary. That Pokemon is actually Skarmory. So Skarmory is a Steel and Flying type Pokemon. So we do retain Steel typing, but we also have Flying type, which opens up a lot. And while I was doing my research for this, I really didn't understand why people were prioritizing Skarmory, because its attacks don't actually open up a whole lot. It's not actually super effective to a whole lot. I was making choices based on as many type coverages that I could get, as much super effective stab damage that I could do. But that's not necessarily what's important here. Skarmory is really important because, one, the Steel and Flying type ends up having so many freaking resistances, it's not even funny. It has so many resistances. The only thing that it's weak to is fire, I forgot. Okay, hang on. The only thing that Skarmory is actually going to be weak against is fire and electric, which is insane because neither of those are inside of our typing. So that means you have to be really smart about what Pokemon you choose to counter Skarmory. That's what my entire last night was spent doing, is researching what is the best possible case scenario to counter Skarmory. In the Gamepress article, they actually mention Melmetal, which I think is a great counter to Skarmory. But the problem is that it's only going to have Thundershock, Thunder, and Rock Smash, Rock Slide. It's only going to have Thundershock, Thunder, and Rock Slide. So a rock type move, as we can see here, is not very effective against any other typing. Nor is it going to be super effective against most of the other meta picks. So Melmetal is literally being chosen to only counter Skarmory. To me, that is dumb. I think it is stupid to waste an entire Pokemon slot on something that will only counter Skarmory. These are basically what Gamepress suggested for the Boulder League, which I added 2 of my own. So they recommend Medicham with counter Ice Punch, Dynamic Punch. I think that is a fantastic, fantastic choice for this freaking Boulder League. That's amazing. Skarmory with Air Slash, Sky Attack, and they actually didn't even suggest Flash Cannon, but it's kind of like a win more situation because the Steel typing is going to do super effective damage towards rock types. So any kind of like surprises that they may throw at you, might as well be prepared with Skarmory by having Flash Cannon on it. Steelix, which has Dragon Tail, Crunch, and Earthquake. The biggest problem with Steelix is that he's going to be super slow, and Dragon Tail as a fast move doesn't really do a whole lot amongst these 4 types. The only thing that maybe he could be good at is like he could be like your pocket anti-meta. Like, if somebody comes at you with something that's totally off the wall, and Dragon Tail, it does at least neutral damage to it, then that's kind of, you know, Steelix's only place, in my opinion. Next, you have Whiscash. Whiscash having Mudshot, Mud Blast, and Blizzard. I personally think that I wouldn't do 2 ground moves on him. I would probably do a water move instead for the fast move. And I'll get to that because as this meta evolves over the next few weeks, I think it'll be more important to have a water fast move than it would be to have a ground fast move. Gliscor, which I love that idea, except Gliscor, like they do state in the Gamepress article, Gliscor does kind of fall into this category where it's good, but it's just not nearly as good as Skarmory. So Skarmory is definitely the better choice. Having Wing Attack, Aerial Ace, and Earthquake definitely does do good. They do mention that you could end up using Gligar instead, except Gliscor is definitely superior here because Earthquake is just such a better move than Dig. Metagross having Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, and Earthquake. I also would almost argue that it would probably be better to have a Psychic move instead of Bullet Punch, only because... Wait, can he? It would be almost more beneficial to have a Psychic move on Metagross, possibly other than Earthquake, because there's so many other ground type moves amongst these Pokemon. The key that I was having trouble with is covering this fighting type. There's nothing in here that actually does super effective damage to fighting. So if you have a Pokemon in your pocket that actually does super effective damage to fighting, I think that's probably going to be the key to success in a lot of scenarios. Once they realize that the fighting type is going to be people's biggest hurdle, I think that that's going to be where people start pushing. Even if you have 2 Medicham and split it up between counter Ice Punch Dynamic Punch, or counter Psychic Dynamic Punch, or counter Psychic Ice Punch, or something like that. If you had two that you could kind of play around with and really maximize that fighting typing, then it's going to be really, really hard to tear through that, because a lot of the Pokemon that are actually good in this scenario with these four typings have a really hard time doing damage to fighting. And that's why I made some interesting choices here. Like Blaziken. I think Blaziken having Fire Spin, I can't remember what his fast move is. Brave Bird, and then Fire Blast. I think that is going to be an amazing Pokemon. One, it has that fighting typing, so it's going to be kind of neutral damage to all of this, except for Rock. It won't take nearly as much damage. But it has Brave Bird, which means that it can actually counter that fighting typing. I think that's a really, really smart choice. Also, with Fire, it's going to be able to do super effective damage towards Steel as well. So you're actually going to be able to counter that Skarmory. I think Blaziken is a 10,000 times better choice than Melmetal. Just for that reason. Because he can counter fighting and he can counter Skarmory, perfect. Next, I chose Camerupt. And Camerupt is an interesting choice. It has Ember, Earthquake, and Solar Beam. Aha! See, I didn't forget. So, with Ember, it's going to be able to counter Skarmory. With Earthquake, it's going to be able to counter Rock and Steel-type Pokemon. Skarmory. Well, it'll do neutral damage to Skarmory. And with Solar Beam, it's actually going to be able to counter Ground and Rock-type again. So you're actually going to be able to cover a lot with that Grass-type move. That's kind of one of the reasons that people really love Breloom. Breloom has Seed Bomb and that other move, and it does really, really well against these typings. But I think that Camerupt, having a Fire-type move to cover your Skarmory, will probably come in more handy than a Breloom just with fighting and grass. Because Breloom also has a Poison-type move, but it doesn't do a whole lot, so yeah. And then last but not least, Melmetal is also in there. That's the Gamepress's recommendation. Of course, I've already stated my opinion on that. I don't agree with Melmetal at all. In my opinion, I think that you should start out with these three Pokemon. I think you should have Medicham, Whiscash, and Skarmory as your opening three Pokemon team. And I think you should have a Metagross, a Blaziken, and a Camerupt on deck to actually hop in on your second or third match if it goes to a best of three. So, that's kind of my take on the Boulder League. I think that it's very interesting the fact that it's limited to these four typings. I think these four typings are very interesting to play around. And I think it makes a very interesting discussion on what Pokemon are best counters for each typing. Honestly, last night I probably spent like 4 or 5 hours digging through different types, different Pokemon, different moves. At one point I had Donphan, at one point I had Claydol in there. I mean, I was shooting for everything. I had Lunatone and Solrock being contenders, and I just kind of weighed pros and cons for every Pokemon. In my opinion, this is actually going to be the best 6 Pokemon to go into the tournament with. As you know, Silph GG rules state that you have to basically reveal those Pokemon to your opponent. And they're probably going to have something along the lines of these 9 Pokemon, but they're just going to kind of mix and match them. The Gamepress article also talks about like Poliwrath, Flygon. There's a few in there, and I think Flygon's actually good. The only problem is that Flygon only has really like either ground or dragon type moves. It doesn't really do a whole lot outside of that. So it kind of falls into that same category that Steelix has, where that dragon type move just, unless you're doing just pure neutral damage, then it's not that great. I think that Steelix is a way better choice than Flygon, only because Steel has so many more resistances. Anyways, that is actually my take on the Boulder League. I'd be happy to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Make sure that if you like to like videos, you hit that button. If you don't, I guess you can do the other one. But if you have anything to say, let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And until tomorrow, guys, I will see you later.